Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Five Stack. I'm Zev Shalev, and that's
I'm
Dean
Dean.
Blundell.
I'm Dean. That's me. I'm Dean.
That's you,
Dean.
Dean.
Now I'm Dean from Snopes.
Dean, you got snoped on the weekend. I didn't even know
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
didn't know that you got snoped on the
No
weekend, but you
idea.
got snoped.
hmm
I saw this article on the weekend. And I was like, I'm sure he's read it because in the article it says that they'd contacted
Hi,
you.
Karen. Hi, Karen. Yeah, no, they didn't. Anyway, continue. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Snopes is one of these fact check outfits that claim to fact check things. And in fact, in this case, they said that they called Dean to verify a story that he'd talked about and posted, and they hadn't. They also claimed to have verified something with a PMO, but didn't seem to even call the PMO. Maybe they did. There's no indication in the story they did. So it's you can tell everyone what the story was, and then we can discuss it. But Snopes screwed up on its own fact checking by
Wow.
not fact checking.
It's funny. I go to great lengths to try to communicate information to people that is accurate. You do too. You do a great job of it. I do my best. And because I've been in the media ecosystem, I've got friends in certain places. I know some things that other people that don't get published, and I'm more than happy to share, the periphery of some of those things with people where it matters. So
Yeah.
last week I did a story about, or it was 2 weeks ago on here on Substack that went mega viral. It was huge, which was fact based and sourced from people that I know and that I speak with, that Mark Carney got on the old telephone after he won the Liberal leadership race, had some conversations with some people over in Europe, overseas, and said, hey, we kind of hold the hammer because we own all the U.S. debt combined, all these countries. There's some outliers and some other countries that own a little U.S. debt in the form of treasury bonds. But he said, slow your roll. Let's see if we can try to, lord this over them like a hammer,
Yeah.
and in March, Mark Carney and the government of Canada suggested Canada should maybe sell some U.S. Treasury bonds. And that was followed up by an announcement where Mark Carney started selling Canadian Treasury bonds, Canadian bonds, in U.S. dollars, which is all fact, all sourced. You can all read it.
Yeah.
So I wrote the story about how Mark had really kind of tuned some people into a pretty decent strategy. And he's currently on the campaign trail. And we're going to talk about this fucking earth-shaking announcement that he put out today about
Yeah. It's a big one.
military. Massive. And so a bunch of countries jumped the gun. Now, if you're Mark Carney and you've identified that a way to hold America accountable is to start weakening their dollar and start making them shit their pants, it was leverage over tariffs. It wasn't meant for Canada and the rest of the free world that owned all the U.S. debt to drive the dollar into the toilet, which is indeed happening now.
Right.
Because some countries have their own sovereign ideas where they're going to start selling those U.S. Treasury bills.
Sure do. China does for sure.
Yep.
So does Japan. So yeah, absolutely.
And so that's what they did. Now the interesting part is of that story that's gone viral, and I just skimmed the Snopes story of them trying to fact check me. Is they said they couldn't find any information about that story being real. Now, of course, you're not going to find any fucking information about that story being accurate because it came from me, from a source. And they also said this, and I thought this was interesting, that they tried to contact me to verify the claim. Nobody, and on my children's lives, nobody from Snopes has contacted me. Not one fucking person.
Well, I believe that, yeah.
And
absolutely.
The reason why I get a kick out of this story and the whole Snopes is because they went to great lengths to do a huge bio on all my shock jockery from the early 2000s, just to try to paint me as someone who might not tell the fucking truth, right?
Yeah.
Or someone who's and so let me just explain something. Snopes is not a fact-checking service. Snopes is a convenient fact-checking advocacy platform where, depending on what they're trying to do, maybe who might be giving
who pays
them funding,
them.
yes, those are the facts that they'll check, and they'll check them with some kind of veracity that might help somebody that's giving them money or help someone who's not giving them money or be detrimental to a certain group of people that they need to pay. So folks, when you read Snopes, I need you to understand something. None of that's real either. They might run into a couple of fastballs when it comes to some fact checking, but Snopes is not a fact checking service. It stopped being a fact checking service a long time ago when someone was like, hey, we'll give you money to fund the growth of this actual website. And they're like, okay. And then they started taking money from advertisers and different people. And then they started fact checking for some of their advertisers to help their dude. Listen, do not believe anything Snopes says. Everything that I sourced in that story comes from real human beings. And by the way, the government of Canada is not about to start talking about how they're strategizing behind Donald Trump's back, who's literally trying to destroy the world.
Not
So
officially, no. They wouldn't
you're
be doing
welcome,
that.
world. You're welcome.
Hey, listen, congratulations for getting the attention, and congratulations to us for people watching us and quoting us. And it's nice to have whatever her name is. Let's find her name. It's Anna Ruskoitskaz, who's based in Brooklyn. Hello, Anna. Fluent in numerous languages and specializes in science and economics. Thank you very much for
Oh,
showing
hi.
us your specialty there.
Anna, listen, if you want to get a hold of me, super simple, dean@crier.co. Send me an email there. I'll get back to you. Happy to have a conversation with you to fact check your fact checking. Thank you.
All right. That's the start of the show. That's just the very start of the show. So, 5 big stories ahead of us today. Let's start with number 5. And, we rarely start off with Canada, but we should start off with Canada because there's a
Yeah.
couple of big stories happening in Canada. And you've got one about defense, and I've got one about Chinese, the Chinese calling, or some people calling Carney a Chinese asset. Why don't you go first with
Yeah,
what's happening
good.
with defense?
We're gonna buttress these two stories. Your
Yes.
story is incredible, and I can't wait to get to it because it's a great springboard off of my story as well. So put out a story
Yes.
today, which lucky enough to flip on the TV and see Mark Carney's press announcement while he's on the campaign trail. Again, Mark Carney, the interim Prime Minister of Canada, who succeeded Justin Trudeau, he's been on a warpath to try and protect Canada from Donald Trump and all the other incursions that seem to want a piece of Canada. He has been on a warpath to prevent Russia, China, and the United States carving up the free world into a multipolar series of empires and regimes. And what he did today was just another nail in the reputation and the coffin of the military industrial complex in the United States, Donald Trump's complete inability to do anything anybody can fucking count on. He stood up at the stump today and he announced that Canada had entered into agreements with several countries, including the EU, to build Canada's military industrial complex, to go it alone with several people, several countries, several organizations, and several partnerships you can count on, including the Rearm EU campaign that's going on right now. We are actually a part of the European bloc's effort to rearm all those European countries around with infrastructure and partnerships and manufacturing and processes that also support the economic boom that's coming to Canada as a result, whether it be raw materials, et cetera, et cetera. And I can't stress this enough, is at the end of it, he was asking some questions. And by the way, what does this include? Great question. It includes the building of an economic and energy corridor across this beautiful country of ours. It includes rebuilding shipyards in the Hudson's Bay and in the north. It includes building military bases in northern Canada, specifically in the Arctic, which, by the way, is happening now. So all of these European allies that have come to the table to help Canada, and Canada has come to the table to help them, also part of the coalition of the willing to support Ukraine in their war against Russia after Russia illegally invaded them, and they're trying to genocide the Ukrainian people to this day. 30 people on Palm Sunday killed in a horrific bombing in Ukraine, which, by the way, Donald Trump said it was a mistake. And I'll get to him later.
We're going to get there later, yeah.
Yeah, but the announcement today wasn't a shot across the bow again. Mark Carney doesn't do that. He's already secured these relationships, and he's going full steam ahead with rebuilding and rearming the Canadian military into a military superpower. And while doing that, doing it on Canadian soil to also give Canada the economic lift that comes from being a part of this processing and building out military equipment, tools at our disposal, quantum AI, working with RBC Borealis to be able to bring together a real proper military that is meant for 2025, 2026, and beyond. And shovels are going in the ground very, very soon as this election is done. But at the end of the press conference, and I thought that this was really salient, and I want to remind everybody that Donald Trump hasn't said a word about Mark Carney or Canada or annexing Canada since Mark Carney refused to take his phone call, finally did it and said, put some respect on our name. I'll talk to you after the election. He was asked in that press conference today. He's like, I'll take anybody's questions, which is another sign of a real leader. He takes all the questions. Nobody's vetted.
Hmm.
Someone from the Globe and Mail said, well, so are you planning on negotiating a trade agreement with the United States and Trump after you've been saying effectively our relationship with the United States is over? And he said, kind of. He goes, I'm securing these relationships.
Yeah.
This is, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
I'm securing these relationships so that we have solutions. So when I go there, I'm negotiating from a position of strength, which means he's more than feathering the nest for Canada. And he's walking in there with pockets full of confidence, trade deals, economic deals, that we get to run that meeting when we go and meet with the Americans. And I thought that was absolutely fucking fascinating because that also was another indicator our relationship with the United States is over.
Over or just turning around in a very different way. I mean, certainly Trump, everything he does seems to be a complete screw up, and he has to backtrack right afterwards, as we've seen with the tariff and the trade agreements. So, here he is again, threatening Canada, 51st state, threatening Trudeau. And what do you get? A resurgent Canada. You get a resurgent Canada with a superpower ambitions now and a military force that, could be very effective just because it's going to be so technologically advanced, as you point out, with
Mhm.
quantum and AI, that you can actually see, you know, how supportive this has been for Canada, despite his intentions. He may have been thinking he was attacking the country, but ended up doing the exact opposite. Look, the guy's a total mess. Every time he announces something, he has to backtrack. Today, he did he backtrack on the auto? He's about to, I think, on the
He's
auto
about to,
tariffs.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I
He's
mean,
considering it today. He's considering it because it's going to destroy the automotive industry in both countries.
so yesterday he exempts everything else like phones and
Yeah,
parts and Timu and Sheen and everything. And today's it's auto parts, so everything's being exempt. It's like there is no tariffs. There are no. It's not happening. But
but
he's still.
let me ask you a question.
Yeah,
Like we go back to the idea that you don't have a confident trading partner, and the
yeah,
rest of the world moves on. And you know what happens geopolitically when you can't trust on somebody? You go with
yeah,
the predictable dance partner, right?
yeah. Of
So
course.
when you think about how Mark Carney's thinking, think of it like that. Like Mark Carney isn't doing business with the United States anymore because they're not a reliable business partner. You cannot trust them to do the right thing. They stop being a safe haven for anything, anywhere, all over. Like
Mm.
they're no longer a safe haven. There's no flight to safety investing in U.S. Treasury bonds. There's no country out there that wants to do business with them. Japan is literally shaking their head trying to figure out what to do because they've upended the world order so much. They're doing business with China, Japan, and Korea,
Yeah, unbelievable.
threatened all the time. They're now doing business with China when it comes to semiconductors. So
He was in Vietnam today doing a major trade deal with them. So,
like
it's just backfiring in every conceivable way. It's just a
totally.
mess.
But that's why what I'm saying is that these things are totally permanent. The
Yeah.
damage that he has done is
Well,
permanent. The announcement that Mark Carney made today is permanent. It's not temporary. It's not a wait and see. It's over.
look, what I think is really important about Carney's announcement is it's not just about building up a force against the United States. It's about building up the Arctic and about building up the northern. Canada, for all the best intentions in the world, has really ignored the North, and it really needs to invest in it. And I think that what Carney's announcing today is a major investment militarily and
Mhm.
in structurally in the ports and everything like that. I think this is so necessary for the future of the world. We can't leave the Arctic abandoned. We can't leave it to Russia and to China and to others to determine what's going to go in there. We are
Yeah.
the key nation up there, and Canada needs to be building a formidable presence and formidable infrastructure to deal with all the trade, all the resources, everything else that's going to be coming out of there. So, even when you talk about permanence, that is the kind of permanence thing that whether it's against the United States or not, it's just going to be a very helpful thing for Canada to have a robust
Yeah.
defense of the Arctic and of the whole country. It's just necessary to have. It just saddens me, as it always does, that we're having to witness this divorce between these two. Otherwise, previously very happy, this happy couple before, but it's happening. There's nothing we can
Yeah.
do about it. The
Yeah.
other Carney story that I just posted is all about. I've been noticing online everywhere. There have been these allusions, call them what you will, to Carney being a asset of Xi Jinping of China. And it's I've done this for long enough now to really understand how these patterns work, because you start seeing how they're seeding this narrative in there by having the main principles of the CPP, the Conservative Party, talk about the key claims, and then also having these influences online that are sort of manufactured influences that fill in all the blanks. And there's a lot of claims out there about Carney being a somehow influenced by China, whether it's the fact that they had this influence campaign supporting Carney. Well,
Yeah.
it's true that China did have an influence campaign, but it's not clear it was really supporting China because there was a bit of both there. There was negative stuff about Carney and positive stuff about Carney. So that one's kind of neutralized. But then, there's claims by Polyev about him securing a $276 million loan. It wasn't him who secured the loan. It was for Brookfield, sorry. He secured it, but he secured it for Brookfield. And even then, we were not even sure that that loan actually took place. This is all Pierre's manufactured. We think that there's a $276 million loan from Brookfield, but we can't prove it. There's no other proof there. Yes, he's met Xi Jinping, but who hasn't really in the world, if you're that level, met Xi Jinping? But that does not mean that he had secret talks, as the conservatives are claiming, with banking officials there. That never really happened, as far as we can tell. There's only one person who claims it's happening, and that's the Chinese ambassador. So, you can take their word for it or not. We choose not to.
Yeah, they never lie.
Exactly. The other stuff about it that is a little concerning is what happened in Markham. And I think Markham is one of those ridings where, boy, that place is under a lot of influence operations.
Well, 64% of Markham is Asian. The rest is other. So, yeah.
So, you've got the previous candidate who clearly was in bed with some, active Chinese operatives. And he resigned. He's no longer standing in that riding. And now the new guy also has some questionable claims about his pro-Beijing stance, which, maybe in that part of the world, you can't actually get away with not having some connection to Beijing groups there if you really are representing that group of that riding. But the bottom line is there's no evidence at all that Carney is a Chinese asset. He's not a Chinese asset. He's not a Chinese puppet. He's a global businessman turned politician who has lots of connections around the world. And we're thankful and lucky to have a guy that is also going to have connections with China because it comes in useful. But it's certainly not anything insidious or covert or anything crazy like that. There's just no truth to that. So you'll be hearing more of this, I think, over the next 2 weeks. It's just all not true. So
no, and it's all being repeated by the same assholes and the same village idiots and the same conservative-backed or Maple MAGA or MAGA-backed conspiracy theorists. And 50%, it's a little stat for you, 50% of all the anti-Carney pro-China or anti-Carney connecting him to China, 50% of those posts come from outside of Canada. So I need everybody to understand that, number one. Number two, the example that you gave in that brilliant story, and I would encourage everybody to go to Zev's Substack to read this. If you're running around looking at things going, oh my God, are we going to elect a Chinese asset as the Prime Minister of Canada? No, they only do that in the United States. So,
that's true.
Yeah. So there's an example that you gave, and I couldn't believe that this gentleman appeared in your story. It's a guy named Mark Slapinski from an organization called Toronto 99, which is him in his government subsidized apartment in downtown Toronto. No, I'm not kidding you.
Yeah.
It's him pretending to be some kind of influencer, some kind of journalist, and he's not. And here's how I know is because I hired him for 2 months.
Of course, there's a tie. I love it.
Back in the day with Crier Media. So I hired him because he was writing a bunch of really great stuff, following around a bunch of crazy people that were trying to throw rocks at Justin Trudeau, and he was actually doing a great job. Later came to find out, because I got an email from a gentleman named Martin Schenk at Lead Stories out. I don't know if you follow Lead Stories out in Belgium. They're a fact-checking company. Alan Duke, former CNN producer, Martin Schenk. They were one of Facebook's fact-checking companies. Recently lost their contract. Anyway, sends me a note and he's like, "Hey, I'm just following up on this story because the president of Pfizer is trying to find a guy that works for you to sue him." And I'm like, "Who's that?" He's like, "Mark Slapinski."
Oh, really? So he's a known, operative?
I later came to find out he operated a bunch of sites and was working with a bunch of people, but he operated under the name Red Panther, and he had a website called Canadian Beaver. The Canadian Beaver was a site that put out all kinds of wacky fucking conspiracy stuff, and one of the stories was about Albert Bourla's wife dying from the vaccine, if you remember that. So Albert
Oh,
Bourla, the head of Pfizer,
yeah.
was trying to sue Mark Slapinski in a court of law. So I immediately
Ah,
fired him,
okay.
and I wrote a whole story about the whole thing, saying, "Hey, it turns out this guy's an absolute fucking online cretin, and here's who he is. He shit posts for money, shit posts for foreign assets, shit posts and lies." And one of the stories that he put out made me laugh the hardest because I was reading his content was about how the Pope the Pope had just been arrested. This is a great story.
Yeah.
As the central member of a global pedophile ring.
Also untrue.
Yeah, you can say what you want about Catholic priests,
Yeah,
or a
yeah,
lot of
yeah,
those
yeah, yeah.
guys are pedophiles, and you
But
can
also
call it.
untrue, yeah.
But it was like he was sharing images of children, and the Italian police had finally apprehended the Pope with the help of Interpol. That's who's putting this stuff out,
Well,
and it's
I'm glad
really
you
important.
shared that
Everybody
background for
remembers that.
me because I didn't even
Yeah.
know that. But I just saw this guy and I was like, wait a second, this guy
He's so
is
full of shit.
it's
He's
just
out
full
there
of
now.
shit.
Now what
And
he's
he's
doing, he's out there peddling the whole Mark Carney's friends with Ghislaine Maxwell, and I'm
yeah.
like, no, he's
But I mean,
not.
he goes on and says, it's a verifiable untruth that he says that he's,
It is.
he's an asset. Like he's not an asset, obviously. And to go on and say that is not legal in any way, you shouldn't be making these allegations. But the ballsiness of it all, and then the Ghislaine Maxwell thing as well, of his shoulder graphic that he had of Ghislaine, is just such a tell. But I wonder who he's getting paid by. I wonder who he's getting paid by.
Well, I know that there are some groups, agencies, and groups that pay
Yeah,
him money that are directly connected with
yeah.
conservative interests in Canada. That much I know.
That's what I mean. I mean, these guys don't just appear there out of their own goodwill. They're doing it
No.
for money, probably. And if that's the case, we should find out who it is because this is bullshit. That people are running influence campaigns or covert influence campaigns like this is it's just not the right way to do things. It's not the Canadian way to do politics in any event.
Yeah, and he's a Polish immigrant with ties to Russia. So there you
Oh,
go. I mean, suck on that.
maybe he's even an asset himself. All right, number 4 is the story out of Ukraine. I mean, just to touch on this press conference today, that the
This is
president.
story three, by the way. This is story three.
Oh,
Story
is it?
three. Yeah, we did Carney 1, Carney 2,
You see,
story
I've got
3.
both those carnies as one, but
No,
okay.
oh, okay. Sorry, no. This is story
Well,
4.
something's
Keep
gonna have to
going.
go. Something's gonna have to fall off. Then, well, we can do this press conference together in two ways. So the press conference, was interesting because the El Salvador president came by to say, we're not going to return your guy. We're not returning him back to the United States because he's a terrorist and he's an El Salvador resident, even though he's also a American resident and had rights to be in the United States, but somehow was mistakenly taken away and sent to this El Salvador maximum security prison, which no one seems to ever emerge from. So there's these two guys, the president and the what's his name,
Nayib Bukele.
Thank you very much. This they've known each other for a while, by the way, and you could
Oh
tell
yeah.
that there was good connection there. And so you can tell what kind of cloth Mr. Bukele's probably cut from. And Donald Trump and him chumming it up over the fate of this guy, an American citizen who is being held. We don't even know where. We're not even sure where he is. And there's no chance now of getting him back because even though the courts have said you have to facilitate his return, the president of the country, and he is the president of that country, is now saying, "No ways am I returning this guy who's a Salvadorian resident as well, a citizen. No way am I returning him back to the United States." So this is a mess, and it's more than just a mess because in this press conference there was a conversation about how Trump wanted to do this to American citizens as well. That he really wants this to be a kind of a penal colony of some sort where they can send American citizens who commit crimes that are so-called heinous crimes
Yeah.
outside of rule of law, outside of habeas corpus, outside of everything, just sending people who they think maybe committed crimes, might maybe commit crimes, who knows, and then send them to this penal colony where they'll be under a different sovereign government's laws, and we may never see or hear from these people again. This is Kremlin style disappearances. This is not like, this is nowhere near what America should be operating like. And yes, this may have had a chilling effect on who crosses the border on the southern border, but it also should be having a chilling effect on every American who must be terrified now because guess what? At any point, you could be one of these citizens that Trump decides he wants to send down there.
Yeah, yeah. It's really concerning considering that in 8 days the Insurrection Act probably gets triggered as well.
We maybe or maybe not, because they've done this alternative thing that they've instituted now, this other law that they announced on after we went off the air on Friday, which is similar to the Insurrection Act, but not necessarily the Insurrection Act, which declares that whole southern border a military base. Um,
Oh,
so it's a similar kind of thing. Anyone who crosses into the military base can be arrested. But the
yeah,
insurrection law may follow suit on that. But it does tell you, that if they've had such success with people's stopping coming across the border, why do they need to do this if they've already had such success and they've chilled the border so much? But we shall
yeah,
see. But this is just like a slow erosion of rights and the slow buildup of militarization. And at the
yeah.
end of the day, we know where it's going to lead. It's going to lead to some sort of military action.
Yeah, two things. A, I appreciate you calling that jail in El Salvador a penile colony, just a colony full of penises.
I mean, you saw the
That's what
Christy
I.
Noam thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
That's what I call the White House, a penile colony. But the other thing is that listen, this whole Abrego Garcia stuff and the gay makeup artist. I don't know his name, and
yeah,
pardon me for not knowing it. Um, and at least 200 to 300 other nonviolent, non-criminal American citizens, legal residents of the United States, are just a prelude to something that he said today. And what he said today with Bukele and that insane press availability, which, let's be honest, I mean, all we're watching is a king take court and mock the rest of the free
oh
world
yeah,
into thinking that he's going to do all this shit. Well, he's doing some of the shit. And one of the things he said in this stupid fucking press availability was, which I thought was crazy, he was under his breath, he and Bukele, who's a hardline Christian nationalist
yeah,
dictator. He is Donald Trump if Donald Trump was, Spanish and a born again Christian who thought it would be a good idea to turn a country into literally a theocracy where he gets to decide. Like he got rid of all the judges, he got rid of all the lawyers, he imprisoned tons of professional people, bankers, and did what Trump effectively wants to do. And this is what their entire country is made of now.
hmm
Is he got rid of everybody, and he's bending the will of that country into crypto, into church going, God fearing. I'll put you in jail if you disagree with me
yeah.
bullshit. Which is why he built that mega prison. Now he's co-opting and he's a third party prisoner of other people's prisoners of war as well. That's what that is. But he said something with Donald Trump today. Trump said, "Hey, listen, I think you need to like build 5 more of those things because
Yeah.
we're going to start sending you some of our homegrowns,
Yeah.
homegrowns, Americans,
Yeah.
Americans."
Yeah. Yeah.
And in 8 days, if that Insurrection Act gets triggered, it's not just people that committed crime. It's not just people that robbed somebody, robbed an old lady. That was his excuse. Today he's like, "Yeah, I'll send Americans." He said it. He said it out loud, even after he was caught on a
Oh no,
hot mic saying it.
he
He's
said it
like,
twice. Yeah. No,
I'm sending Americans there, Americans I don't like. And Americans he doesn't like is everybody that disagrees with him. 300 million people didn't vote for him. So 300 million people are on the block. And here's the catch, and this is the fucking crazy part. There's another memo that went out. It's a leaked memo from Rubio to some people at Homeland. And the leaked memo said, we are going to, this wasn't an announcement. This is a secret. We are going to get rid of, deport, and detain anybody that we think has a different belief system or we think might say something that we don't like in the future. We expected crimes, they called it,
well,
from
this
the
ties in. Yeah.
future,
Yeah.
past, future, and current. If we expect that you might commit a crime,
Yeah.
we're going to get you, and we're going to send you to El Salvador to effectively a concentration camp / gulag. I mean, my
Run
friends.
by a autocrat with no judicial system in a place where people go in, but they just don't seem to ever come out. I mean, we just don't know
No,
what'll happen to American citizens there. I mean, sure, it'll be very effective in making people very scared and
yeah,
chill any opposition, which is exactly the intent. But the reality of it is also terrifying. I mean, the fact that you're going to have citizens disappeared off the streets of America and we're not going to notice them,
yeah,
and then they'll be forgotten, like Abrego here. And I think that there's a real people need to start taking real attention to this because it affects every part of, the people in Nazi Germany where they didn't know either, right? People started disappearing off the streets. People didn't know. Well, we're entering that kind of zone now where people might just be disappearing off streets, and you turn a blind eye to that, of course, because you don't want your family associated with any of that or whatever. But you know what? If you turn a blind eye to all of that, they will come for you after all at the end. We know
Hmm.
that. That's the way history is. So, we're at a very tricky time in America, as you know. The other part of the press conference was this other, when 30 people died yesterday in an attack by the Russians on Ukraine. And Trump has the goal to say that the all the deaths in Ukraine are because of number one, Putin. He had to sort of say that. Number two was Biden. Joe Biden is causing all these deaths. What? And number three is Vladimir Zelensky. I mean, the goal to say that about the man who's helped Ukraine stand up to all these assaults by arming them, by helping them survive this horrible 3-year war,
Yeah.
to accuse him of being responsible for the deaths yesterday is just ridiculous. He spent his whole press conference doing that. I happen to think that Biden was one of the better presidents in American history. I know a lot of
Statistically, he was one of the best.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. A lot of people might disagree with me, but I happen to think that he was, and put us, held us together for these last 4 years in a way that was really hard to do, and held Ukraine together in the last 4 years. So to hear Trump say these things is not surprising. It's not shocking anymore. It's just full of the same stuff that we've heard over and over and over again. But if you think that there's some sort of deal that's going to come out of all of this that's going to help anybody, and that the ceasefire deal is actually going to happen, I don't believe it. I just don't see it happening. I don't think there's any. I think Putin is just playing games. I think that meeting with Witkoff the other day was just a mess, and just
Theater.
just a request of things that he wants, like, and
Yeah.
we're just taking it down and fulfilling it. So that's the other part of that press conference today. That was story number 4 and 3, if you want,
Four
together.
and three. No, I could just do four, but just a quick.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, the mask is off,
yeah,
right? What I saw today with Donald Trump, effectively, and this is again paraphrasing. He was asked, because Zelensky did something incredible a couple of days ago. He put in an order for Patriot missiles and Patriot systems. He's like, "We'll buy them from you. We'll give
yeah,
you $50 billion. We'll buy them from you."
yeah.
So that put Trump in a real spot, right? Because if
Right.
he's a businessman and if he supports Ukraine like he says he does, then yeah, for sure. Now they're paying their way. So he's taking that bullet out of Trump's gun. So he was asked about that today, and that was his response. And again, paraphrasing his response was, he's always asking for missiles. No,
Yeah.
he offered to pay for them. So let's fact check that. Offered to pay for them, wasn't asking. And then he said, you don't start a war with a country like that and then go begging for equipment. He didn't start the war, and he's not begging for equipment.
No.
Okay? So the illusion in that one exercise, and Zelensky set him up for that, and it worked perfectly. He walked right into it. The illusion that Donald Trump is anything other than an absolutely intrinsically compromised Russian puppet,
Oh yeah.
a tool of Vladimir Putin. What I saw today was just more of that. It was more of the resume of the relationship between Vladimir Putin, Russia, and Donald Trump. And I'm getting really fucking tired. I really am. Of the lack of pushback or the legitimization of any of those comments as, well, this is what he said in the media. Nobody is talking about it the way they should, which is that man is legitimately crazy. He's a Manchurian candidate. He's a compromised Russian asset who's going to soft work to destroy Ukraine and every one of his former partners and the partners of that country for the very mutual benefit of the relationship between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. That's
And
all this is.
and is starting World War III. I mean, what we're talking about with Ukraine's collapse, if it ever happens, which it won't, but if what we're talking about is World War III. I mean, that's Putin pushing further into Europe and taking over more countries in Europe. I mean, it might seem like, Donald Trump's a bit of a fool and the stuff he says is nonsense, but he is also, the leader of America with one of the greatest militaries in the world ever, and is about to potentially join ranks with the Russian leader in a world war. This is not something we should be taking lightly. This is quite serious stuff. And as you point out, the media is still failing every day by
Oh my
giving him
God.
this legitimacy, which just
Well, that's why
doesn't
people come
deserve it.
here. That's why
Yeah,
people
that's
come
right.
here, and that's why people connect with other. Honest to God, like we.
Absolutely.
I can't sleep at night if I've sent some people somewhere which isn't good for them, because isn't
Oh
good for
my
their mental
gosh.
health, or if I fucking lie about something.
Yeah,
I mean, Rupert Murdoch said it best, and if you don't think the rest of mainstream media isn't completely compromised by the color green, you're crazy. He said the truth isn't black and white; sometimes it's green. And they know Donald Trump is good for business because people
yeah.
will watch their channels. People will look at what he's saying, so they will legitimize him and walk through the outrage and watch you get crazy. Don't get crazy. Just come here and we'll explain it.
Exactly. A couple of good stories that I do want to mention because it's good to have some good stories. So,
Yes.
Harvard University pushing back against the federal requests for their control over almost everything that a university does. They sent a letter today saying that, to that end, Harvard has made and will continue to make lasting and robust structural policy and programmatic changes, yada, 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 but essentially says we'll only comply with the law as far as the law can go, and that's it. So it's good that finally a university, especially one like this university,
Yeah.
is finally pushing back against the insane requirements that the Trump regime is now instituting on learning institutions by jeopardizing their grants. Sometimes millions and millions of dollars of grants are being jeopardized. But Harvard is pushing back, saying, no, no, academic freedom is more important sometimes than what you're saying. We will only comply up until the law, which is good news for Harvard. The other piece of good news is that Pete Marocco, who's the State Department official who oversaw the dismantling of the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, he has been fired. He's the guy who was very close to Elon Musk and was in charge of basically ripping apart the USAID program, which is nonsense and no one should have ever done that. And now turns out there was a huge staff revolt. They alleged that he abused and marginalized staff, and that's why he was fired, left his job to this week. So goodbye, Pete Morocco, and hopefully you won't be back anytime
I'm
soon.
shocked he didn't get a bonus from Trump for being that guy.
See, some things are still okay within the U.S. government. So the big news today was, this AI that Elon Musk Grok has developed, he's now got the highest reasoning ever, scores 100 out of 100 in reasoning. Soon, Elon Musk claims AI will be way smarter in terms of reasoning and intelligence than even every human being together. And Donald Trump chimed in on this, saying the best definition of intelligence is the ability to predict the future. This is all true, actually. I would say one of the good ways of defining intelligence could be the ability to predict the future. But
Don't think so.
maybe it's not that. The what do you think it is? Do you think it is?
I think the best. Listen, I think if he thinks the best, Donald Trump says anything, it's a lie and it's probably inaccurate. And if you ask me what the best way to gauge intelligence is if you can predict the future, well, then the amazing Kreskin is the smartest man in the world, right?
Hey, listen, if
So
you can accurately predict the future, certainly got a lot of power. I mean, that certainly gives you a skill set that's out there. Look, I don't believe what he's saying about Grok, and I don't believe that they won the number, they better reasoning than any other AI. I don't believe any of that. But let's assume that what they're saying is true, because what I've been doing over the last few days is analyzing what's going on inside of Doge. They've got now Palantir inside of Doge, and Palantir is Peter Thiel's company, which is named after the what is the name of that?
Lord of the Rings,
Lord of the Rings,
it's a
all-seeing eye. Yeah, it's like
yeah,
a
it's a
thingy that can see
stone.
the
Looks like a
future.
big bowling ball. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this thing,
Palantir.
what it's basically can see everything around the world, and Palantir is really trying to build this. And it seems to me, the more I look into this, what Elon Musk is doing inside of Doge is linking all these disparate databases together, combining them under Palantir's Foundry platform, and is going to be able to collect incredible amounts of data. And the amounts of data is one thing. Like, yes, you can collect everyone's net worth, their assets, their past businesses, their past medical histories, all sorts of things you could pull out of these
Yeah.
data points. But when you're able to cross-reference these things, is when you get to see the real power of data. Now, of course, not only are they getting their hands on your IRS and the Treasury data and all the other government data that they're busy mining through right now, they already have tons of data because they are the broligarchs. They've got the Facebook data, they've got your Amazon data, they've got your X data, they've got already all this stuff. And by combining all of this stuff, what they're truly going to try to do is build a monopoly on data. And monopolies on data are probably the most terrifying scenario, more terrifying than anything we've discussed today. And there's been a lot of terrifying things we've discussed today. Is this idea that a group of people or a person and entity is going to control all the data in the world? Because with that, they have minute control over everything. They can see everything you're doing. They can predict, as you pointed out, predict crimes and stuff like that. They can see the patterns that you might be thinking about or hesitating about, or what you might be reading online. They may be able to predict your actions so much, and then they can change your life just by deviating some things around your life, whether you have enough food, enough money, enough air, enough water. They'll be able to control absolutely every aspect of your life. It sounds so terrifyingly dystopian, and yet I think this is what's really going on at Doge, because they have this. Palantir is a very powerful system, and the reason we have silos in government is precisely to avoid this kind of thing. And here they are without any oversight, without anybody looking at what they're doing, running hackathons inside the U.S. government in order to basically combine all this data. And who knows what they'll do with it? It can't be good with these people involved. So I've got a series on my Substack at narrative.org about that if people want to check it out.
Yeah, it's a 2-part series, as a matter
Well,
of
it's like
fact.
a 5-part, but the 2 parts. This part 2 is out today. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a chilling read, if you understand, and it is dystopian, which Twyla said, which you aptly tagged at the start of this conversation. Everything's changing, and if you thought for a second that Elon Musk was just going in to get rid of government corruption, we've said this 100 times. You're nuts. You're crazy. This was his intention. And he'll be able to tell you within, a radius of 5 feet who's at what voter registration booth. He'll be able to then send those people messages. He'll be able to then predict who's going to get out of line, who's going to get in line. And he's then going to become the most powerful man in the world, if he already isn't. Because you know who wants that information? Republicans. Democrats, the Duma,
everybody.
Yeah, everybody, every government around the world, every single government around the world will want that. So he'll be able to write his own ticket and decide exactly how and who and what get the information that they get, and he'll be able to take action on any of those requests for them for a fee. Yeah. So all of your data, everything that you do, if you're in the United States of America, we have Palantir here involved in some aspects of Canada, which I think they need to remove. I think Canada needs to remove anything to do with Elon Musk and Starlink. I think if we have technology that belongs to Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, anybody associated with them when it comes to data, securing, capturing data, I think it needs to be banned from Canada. And I don't think Mark Carney isn't above doing that. I think he is.
It's a good idea.
But your piece was chilling because it really connected all the dots about why Big Balls and Donkey Chota and his entire team of hackers have been making their way through government organizations, collecting information, and the pushback and why the pushback was there. Because you're not supposed to have that much information about people, because what you can do is you can accurately guess, accurately push, accurately trigger people into making decisions that they normally wouldn't make. And that is what this is all about. It's not about anything else. You can actually get money from them. You can take money out of their bank accounts. You can put money in their bank accounts. You can frame people with crime. You have control over the American civil society as you know it, with all of that information. And that was the deal that Donald Trump made him. He's like, hey, dude, I'll give you all the information, bunch of government contracts. All I want you to do is get me elected. Well, now he's paying the piper. And Donald Trump doesn't give a shit, because who's the chief beneficiary of all that work? Donald Trump.
Yeah, and Vladimir Putin. I mean, you can't overstate what you said there about the Duma. I mean, the reality of it is Vladimir Putin and Elon Musk were involved in electing Donald Trump together. We know that. They were operationally involved in this attempt to install him as a successful attempt at making him the president of the United States again. So, of course, everything that Elon Musk is doing is under the auspices of Vladimir Putin and probably of Xi Jinping as well. So this notion that this is some sort of good for the American people, what they're doing in Doge, is just not true. What's happening in Doge is only in Russia's national interest. And once they control all this data and they control AI, they control America in a way that we can't really understand. It's almost worse than being in the penal colony in El Salvador or penile. Because, at the end of the day, if every aspect of your life is fully controlled, everything is exposed, you don't have secrets, you don't have every aspect of every turn you take, no matter with the data you're getting, the advertising you're getting, the information you're getting,
Sure.
is constantly fed to you specifically for you to manage your life. And when your boss is an avatar and they're measuring your sleep patterns, and some of the stuff that I had researched this was with Grok himself, Grok itself. I was asking, what are the risks? And Grok is like, this is really, really dangerous, what's going on. And so, people need to be very wary of what's going on at Doge. And I don't know how better to shout this from the hilltops. I'll keep publishing these posts, but people really need to start taking this as a serious issue, because we can't let
Hmm.
this continue. It's not, and they're moving at breakneck speed. Within a
Yeah.
month, they're going to have it built. So,
Well, and listen, let's be serious here. They're trying to create a sim. They're
mhm,
trying to put you in a simulation. They're trying to keep you believing in alternative realities, theories, and post-truth society that make a guy like Donald Trump a palatable choice for president of the United States.
yeah,
They're trying to get you to ignore the truth. They're trying to cover up the truth. They're trying to cover up their crimes. This is about a bunch of things, but the most important things about it's about servitude of the American people, the most powerful country in the world, to an ideology and a group of fucking criminals and incels and losers, and then selling all of you out
mhm,
to Vladimir Putin and foreign assets or the highest bidder. You have elected the fox that went into the hen house. He's busy running around trying to impregnate all of those hens, but
mhm,
he's also gathering up all the most important evidence that he possibly can so that he can legitimately change the world with a keystroke, change your life with a keystroke, and you will not know that it's happening. You will believe in things you didn't think were true. You'll follow ideologues and ideologies you never would before.
mhm,
And this is a perfect cover for a group of individuals and countries who want to continue to rape, pillage, steal, and destroy humanity and society as we know it, and democracy, more importantly. They'll make you think you live in one, but you don't. I mean, like legitimately, America elected a guy, and this is the danger of that sim. America elected a guy who basically today said he's going to start sending people. America elected
mhm,
this man
mhm.
said he's going to start sending people to concentration camps. Americans. That's
Yeah.
what he said.
And who's going to
So
determine that? Is the AI going to determine that? The AI that they built that is surveilling your every move, that knows exactly what you're thinking, that might be predicting that you're going to be committing a crime, might be part of a rebellion. Are they going to be? Is the drone going to pop up out of nowhere and say, "Hey, you," or the RoboCop and say, "Hey, you're under arrest. You're
mhm,
going," and be
mhm,
shipped off to El Salvador? I mean, these are not things that we're imagining is a science fiction. These are reality,
yeah,
possible realities today. And so this imagine everything that is in your domain today, everything that you think that you're in control of, whether it's your assets, your physical things that you own, or your family that you think you can actually control your kids, or your what you watch, what you consume, what you decide to eat every day. You think you have all this choice. Well, imagine if all of that was really just controlled, down to where you live, what you can eat, what you can do, what you're permitted to do every day, whether you're allowed to travel or not, whether you have your freedom, whether you can think or not, and whether every single idea you've ever had is not yours because they already can see that you've got it.
bingo.
That's where we're heading. And so that is chilling. And I wish I was making it up. I wish it was just fantasy.
No, I'm glad you cover it. Somebody has
Yeah.
to. Not a
Yeah.
lot of people do, and you're one of the best at it. So I would highly encourage everybody to go and read about Zev's Doge series, part one and part two. I'm looking forward to the next three, four, five. But you're one of the best at it. Go to Zev's Substack. He's got a deal right now, I think, for people too, 30% off. This is an annual
Yeah.
subscription. Is that right? You got
That is
that?
correct. Still going on
It's
until the
cheap.
16th.
It's cheap to be informed,
It
people.
it is good value at the end of the day. We put a lot of work into this. And Dean Blundel's Substack, you've been roaring away. I have been watching your stuff, and it is good stuff. Your story this morning about the other side of the Carney disinformation campaign was really fantastic. Your stuff this evening about the defense strategy is also the first time I'd read about that. So you're breaking news left, right, and center, and you're still, I think, number one on the political culture list. I think, are
Weird.
you?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
number two on the
On
new bestseller.
yeah. Yeah.
Well done. It's awesome. It's awesome for a brand new show like ours and for a stack like yours to have so much attention at such an early stage is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Thank
So,
you. Yeah.
so thanks to everybody for for their support for both of us. It's been really great, and we appreciate it.
Mhm.
And I know you'll all check out Dean's Substack at deanblundell.substack.com. And that is the show tonight. Thank you very much for being here on the Five Stack. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a good night, everybody.